Welcome to the Right Method webinar series. And this is one of three. This is the first, and this is pillar number one, organization. So welcome to all of you, and I appreciate your time. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get started right away. Okay, so this is the Right Method Pre-Summer Success Secrets, Pillar 1. And this is being recorded in the spring in almost mid to late May 2024. And so we're really anticipating the summer tutoring. However, I know that many of you will not be looking for tutoring. And so this is a great webinar series that was created for you in mind as well, because I wanted to be able to create something that you can use at home. And of course, if you want to know how to do these things, you'll want to reach out to me individually and ask about the resources that I have to guide you through these things. And so let's get started right away. I am Kevin Shaw, and I am a charter school teacher. I started off in public school education, public high schools, and have worked for a charter school and a different charter school, and worked with court and community students as well. And so I have a huge wealth of experience all the way from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. Currently, I teach at a homeschool, an advanced high school run by the county for homeschooling parents. And so the students show up one day a week. It's run like a college course. And so I'm very happy to be there. A very rigorous program. And so basically introduction, hello, and greetings. So this is the point in the webinar in which you get to share who you are. And obviously, if you're watching this pre-recorded, then you won't have that opportunity. So say hello to yourself. All right. So webinar norms are something we don't have to be concerned with right now. And so I wanted to start with the why. So why writing mastery is crucial. And proficient writing enables efficient completion of assignments, freeing up time for extracurricular activities like sports, hobbies, and internships. And I know in talking with some of the parents on my Facebook group page and on the other Facebook pages that your students are really busy and they are doing amazing things at a young age. And so I'm very impressed with that. And so there are some questions that you may have about the benefit of the right method, tutoring, and or the tools that we provide. And so we're going to answer some of those questions for you because there is a real benefit when it comes to not just being a master writer, but the three pillars that I'm going to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about one pillar today in this webinar, and I'll be talking about the other pillars, the other important pillars which work together in the other webinars. Okay. Strong writing is vital for success in academics, internships, and the workplace. Mastering writing provides a competitive advantage in college admissions and career pursuits. Now, here's another thing that you may not realize, but some of you do realize, and that's why you've come to me asking for help. And it's this fact of grade inflation. And so this bottom paragraph here, grade inflation often masks the need for better writing skills until students face standardized tests, professional demands, or the disappointment of college rejection letters, risking failure at higher levels. Now, I knew when I wrote my college entrance letter when I was in high school that the writing that earned me A's, and I did receive an award in high school for English, for my accomplishments in English, but I knew I would need help if I was going to apply to the top university at the time, the number one university. And I applied. I did get some help in my essay. My grades were not 4.0, by the way. And I don't think I had the best extracurricular activities, but I did specialize and I did get in right away. I got my acceptance letter probably a week or two after applying, which was incredible, back in November 1988, if you want to know. But we don't want you to wait until you get a waiting list letter or a rejection letter to realize the importance of writing. You may have straight A's in high school, but yet, how are you going to know if you objectively have writing that's going to measure up at the highest levels? And it's going to make you competitive with all the other students out there from across the country who are hiring high level tutors like myself, um, and have that advantage and are going to get in. So I want to help you to avoid that, as well as those of you who have students who are struggling and who maybe are not at the top of their class, but they would like to go to a decent or even a top-notch college, but they know that their writing's not quite there yet. So I can help those students as well. The agenda today, what we're going to talk about in this pre-recorded webinar, is the right method approach. Okay. Now, the pillar that we're going to talk about is organization. It's a foundational level pillar. And I spent probably $28,000, actually a little bit more than that, and 8 months in a research project. It was a marketing project as well to develop a long-term business helping students. And one of the things I found out was that students are missing organization, at least some students. We'll talk about what that means. The 6 stages of the writing process will be something we'll cover. We'll talk about the benefits of organization. We'll talk about time management and autopilot scheduling. We'll talk about capturing ideas through organization, next steps, and Q&A, question and answer session. All right, so parents' needs and goals. So if you were live with me in this presentation, I would ask you, what caught your attention when you first learned about this Eventbrite webinar? Maybe you found out about this through Facebook or some other means. What caught your attention? Was it A, needing help for a 10th, 11th, 12th grader struggling with writing? Was it wanting to enhance a good writer skills for college admission success? And by the way, the workplace is one of these places that, like the standardized tests, the ACT, the SAT, the SAT, the PSAT NIM squat, which is the PSAT, and the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. Those, like those measures, which look at writing from an objective standpoint, and high schools obviously look at writing from a subjective standpoint, a lot of times overinflating the grade. The workplace is going to be another place where your student is objectively judged on their ability to write, not just their ability to write, but to write concisely to the point. And what is that fine balance between over speaking, over writing, and not providing enough detail? Okay. And so is that one of the reasons why you've come to me? Because you want to find what that balance is. And you know that, and as we do know from the workplace, people that can speak and write and read effectively are leaders in the workplace. And those are the people that receive the highest promotions the quickest, because they're compelling. People want to follow them, especially if they're to the point and they can communicate, they can tell stories. Okay. Or did you come to me for another reason altogether? And I've had people that reach out to me because they are adults who have kids, or maybe their kids are grown or they're too young for the tutoring, and the other tools that I provide, but the parent themselves, him or herself, they would like to become a better writer, or they would like to teach this to their school kids. All right. The right method approach to organization. There's, of course, a little typo here. I quickly created these slides today. And speaking of the need to proofread, so the right method emphasizes process tools, and discipline, setting students up for success across core subjects. We use a 6-stage writing process, providing students with a clear framework for effective organization. Now, you may be asking, what is organization, right? It's the arrangement of tasks in a sequence, perhaps. That's one way to describe organization. There is organization within the writing itself. So if you look at a paragraph, is that paragraph organized? Does it have main ideas? Does it have details that support those main ideas? Does it move logically from one idea to the next? That's one method of organization, which we'll talk about in the third webinar, which is all about the mechanics of writing. There's also a third aspect, which is time management. And it's actually what I consider the base layer or the foundational layer of effective writing. Okay. So time management is a key skill and it is foundational. So I'm going to bounce back and forth in this webinar between these two ideas, especially of organization. Organization in terms of the writing process and organization in terms of time management, generally speaking, meaning a student's schedule throughout the week, not just English, but for their science, history, government, PE, sports, whatever it is, because that has an effect upon their ability to write and an ability to embrace the writing process. Because if we're ignoring that, then the students are not going to have a format for embracing this process, because it does take not a lot of time. It's just the way that it's split up does matter. Benefits of organization: improved efficiency, enhanced clarity, better performance, time management, higher confidence. So just a little sampling of one of the things I do when I work with parents and students, whether it's in the school that I teach or whether it's in my tutoring. Time management and autopilot schedule. So what do we mean by an autopilot schedule? What we're talking about is what the student is doing on a particular day at a particular time, which repeats itself throughout the week, right? Now, it could be that Mondays have a particular format for students and Tuesdays are different. I'm not here to tell you exactly how to run that. And if you work on me with me one-on-one, we'll talk about that in greater detail. It's incorporating. So back to that question, what is an autopilot schedule? It's a schedule that students follow where they don't have to recreate it from one week to the next. Now, there are variations in that, of course, if they're at the end of a semester or they're working on a major project or they have other things going on in their life, which really requires an adjustment, then they can modify that schedule or they can be flexible as well. So it's not necessarily a schedule that goes hour by hour, minute by minute. It might be a block schedule. Okay. Incorporating time management into the organizational process streamlines task completion. And once a student knows what days and times they're going to work on English, they can go back and in their planner, they can write down these different parts of the writing process. Like on this day, I'm going to take care of these 3 steps. On those days, I'm going to take care of these other steps. And the writing process, of course, is recursive. It goes sometimes from one step to the next in sequential order, but oftentimes you have to repeat certain parts of the process. So you might finish that final draft and realize that you have to go back and redo it. Okay, so how is that built into our time block schedule? That's important as well. This builds the foundation for the writing process, ensuring students can perform at their best consistently. And I like to say that with an autopilot schedule and other elements of the schedule, which we're not going to talk about today, the student should be able to perform their best when they're at their worst. You know, I have a friend who's a tutor. She lives in Canada and she earns probably $1.2 million per year tutoring, just tutoring, not teaching. And she struggles with ADHD, attention deficit hyper disorder. And she also has other issues that she deals with that are really difficult emotionally. She created a system for herself, such as an autopilot schedule, and she also has standard operating procedures, right? Which is something I highly recommend as well. And if you want to know what that is, you can reach out to me after this webinar. I'll give you my contact information. But an SOP, standard operating procedure, is something that she falls back on so that when she's having a terrible day and she doesn't feel like doing anything, she can follow that standard operating procedure. She knows what her schedule is. She knows that she's built times of refreshment into her schedule. She's built in some break times, some off time, some recreation time, some family time, some do nothing time. And so she's able to sustain that in business. And she has probably 30 to 50 employees working for her. And they would never know that she suffers from ADHD because she's always on the ball. She's always performing. So that's one of the benefits of organization is we're able to sustain the difficult cerebral and really the mental aspect of learning, right? We want to save mental real estate. We want to save bandwidth for getting into the essay, getting into the ideas themselves. And so students can be as creative as possible. And that's going to be one of the advantages that is going to help them to surpass all the other students that are trying to compete for those scholarships and those college admissions and those grades. Okay, I teach this process to students and families. I already told you that. What are the 6 stages of the writing process? The writing process involves 6 stages, integrating organization and content development. So let's talk about that for a brief second. Now, we're not going to really focus on the writing process here. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here to just explain each of these so that we're a little bit more clear what we mean by each of these stages. But the idea here is not to focus on the writing process. It's just to know that there is a process and that parts of the process enable different things to happen for students. And by embracing the writing process, they will be able to give enough time for things like their ideas, things like the writing itself, and also having some break time in there. So again, it's a sustainable habit and they can maintain their energy and save it for the really important things like flying their drone, right? Doing their summer internship at Harvard or whatever it is, right? So pre-writing, drafting, responding, revising, editing, and final draft. Those are the 6 stages at a glance. Now, pre-writing is everything that students do before they sit down to write their first draft. If they're taking a walk with their friend and they're talking about their writing assignment, that's pre-writing. If they're jotting down notes from a pre-recorded lecture, they're on Khan Academy, or they're just in class taking notes, that's pre-writing. If they're filling out index cards, if they're using thinking maps or graphic organizers to capture their ideas, that's pre-writing, okay? If they're lying down on their bed thinking about the topic and visualizing how they're going to go about this research paper, that's pre-writing, okay? And students will do all sorts of things with these. I will have my students actually taking little walks during class outside, and I'll give them think time. And so they're capturing their ideas. Now, let's move to the next stage here, drafting. And by the way, one of the pillars is going to deal all with ideas. And that's when this stage here, pre-writing and drafting and responding in particular, these 3 stages will work together as a whole to help the idea stage. Kelly Gallagher, a famous high school teacher, says there are only 2 reasons why students don't write. And by the way, if you think this is just students who struggle, this is published authors. This is novelists who experience writer's block. 2 reasons why students don't write. Number one, they don't know what to write about, so they don't have the ideas. They're like, I don't know what to write about. The other reason why they don't write is because, or why they struggle and spend extra time, is because they don't know how to write those ideas. They have the ideas in their mind. How do I organize it? How do I start? What am I really trying to say? So we address all of those by these 3 pillars. That's what makes this company that I started very unique. You won't find anything like it anywhere else. The drafting stage is where we actually attempt to put all the writing into one page and put all of our thinking down on paper. Now, it's not necessarily a 5-paragraph draft. It might be one continuous stream of consciousness using all of the ideas that we've gathered. And obviously, if the student has filled out a thinking map, they're going to use that in their draft, just like anyone would an outline. And they're going to try to do this draft as quickly as possible. When I'm drafting, I will often take walks. I'll pull out my phone, I'll record my draft, and then I'll transpose that. I'll generate the transcript. And, I might even use a number of apps that record my voice and instantly convert that to text. I think that's very useful. And because we want to get all of our ideas out there, we don't want to worry about the writing itself. We want to focus on the ideas, the ideas, the ideas. Okay? Get them all out there. And later on, when we get to the responding stage or the feedback stage, we'll talk more about that. Then we're going to start to mold and shape that amorphous, endless blob of ideas into an organized set of ideas that we can actually build upon and can actually are something that somebody can read and can agree with. Okay. Responding is when we share our draft with either another person, or we've waited at least 20 minutes, maybe even overnight, if we don't have anybody available to read our draft to or hand it to them to read. We can read our draft or hear it with our own ears. Okay. Now, what's important in this stage is feedback. It's somebody saying, okay, I follow you here, but what are you trying to say here? Because I don't quite follow you there. What are you trying to say? Right? We might say, oh, it's simple. I'm trying to say A, B, C, D, E. And then the person might say to us, well, you didn't say that explicitly in your draft. Okay. So that is one of the values of having this responding stage. Some people call it the peer response stage. What it looks like in my classroom and in my tutoring is that students will pair up and they will spend some time with each other reading the draft. And then I'll have them fill out a reflective response form or give them a set of simple questions that they can ask and answer. And then they'll use that format to share their feedback with their classmate. And their classmate, can take the suggestion or they can reject it as they see fit. Okay. And so that's really important to include in the writing stages. Revising is obviously probably a stage that makes the most sense to people. However, I want to tell you what revising is not. It is not editing. It's not looking at spelling. It's not looking at our sentence structure. It's not even looking at organization, really, per se. In a way, it is. Because what you're doing when you revise is that you are either rearranging your ideas to fit in a logical order, if that's what you're aiming at. It's adding things, details, ideas that tell a fuller story, that make the argument, the thesis more persuasive. etc. It's deleting things. So it's deleting details or ideas that don't really advance the argument, don't really enable you to analyze something. And it's also revising, fine-tuning things, making the writing more concise. And I would say that it's really focused on the ideas. The editing stage happens where you let your writing sit, preferably overnight, but at least 20 minutes, and you come back and you read your writing out loud. Now, there are apps that you can use, such as I think Natural Reader. There's also, if you look in Word docs in Microsoft Word, if you press the review tab at the top of the screen, you will find that there is a voice reader that will read the document out loud. And I do suggest that students read their own writing out loud so that they can hear it. And the ear has a funny way of capturing ideas or capturing gaps in reasoning or the order of a sequence in writing. It also has a nice way of picking up on the rhythm and the feel of the language, the sentences. And oftentimes, if the sentences are too choppy and are too many short sentences, the ear will probably say something like, "That doesn't feel right, doesn't seem natural, doesn't seem varied enough." So that's the point in which I instruct students to use like complex sentences, complicated sentences to vary the sentence structure a little bit. All right, so, but editing, obviously, you'd want to look for gaps in the actual sentence structure. Maybe there's some missing words. Maybe there needs to be a comma, a semicolon, a colon, a dash, whatever it is. Okay, and then there's a spell check, right? Well, the final stage in the 6 stages of the writing process is the final draft, and that's where you make all those changes. Okay, capturing ideas through organization. So effective organization does a couple things for us. It enables idea generation. As we've illustrated before, it gives you the time, the space to actually allow yourself to think, to communicate with others, to express what's in your mind, to hear your ideas. Provides a framework for capturing and developing ideas, showcasing tools like thinking maps and brainstorming techniques. That's another thing we mentioned prior. And that basically is our webinar. And so I'd invite you to consider the next steps. So what are those steps? So you can either sign up for the next webinar, and I highly recommend that you listen to all 3 webinars. And there may even be a 4th webinar because I'm thinking of adding a 4th pillar, because I've been talking to a lot of advanced students, and there's some special training I went through way back in 2006, 2007. And I'm very excited about sharing that with students. And I've only shared that on a limited basis with students that I help to get published. And so I've done some writing workshops for creative writing as well. And those are pretty fun. I've done those out here in California, pretty much on the Kern River in the outdoors. So, all right. So consider personalized help with 2 options. So the first option, sign up for the next webinar. The second major option is consider personalized help. Now, under that, there are 2 different ways to go about getting help, number 1 and number 2. So number 1, book a student success session. This session offers a deep dive into your students' goals, their frustrations, whatever their struggles are. And that is done with the parent or the parents and the student and myself on a Zoom call. It lasts anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And for those of you that are listening to this, it'll be free of charge. And it's normally like a $60 to $75 value. And you're going to do a deep dive with an expert tutor to get customized help for your student. And we mean customized. It's going to be my suggestions, our suggestions for what to do with your student given their goals and their frustrations and their time frame. How soon do they want to achieve this? You'll receive either a valuable resource or access to our expert tutoring. So some of you may want to look into the tutoring. Some of you may say, well, that's okay. We like the suggestions that you're giving us, and we're just going to go with that. And that's fine too. Depending on whether your student qualifies, you might be able to join us in our tutoring. It's a very small group, no more than 10 students at a time. And due to high demand and limited availability, you'll want to answer a few short questions to determine the eligibility for that. The process is quick, taking less than 5 minutes. This session is offered at no charge for webinar attendees. Now, what I'm talking about there is that if you want to see if you're eligible for a student success session, then what you do is you reach out to me via text, email, or through the Facebook page, and you mention a student success session, and I'll send you a couple quick questions, and either we'll chat on the phone, via text message, or electronically, and then I'll tell you within 5 minutes or less if your student is eligible for that session, and then you'll go through the session, or I'll direct you somehow. I'll give you some value that will help you. And one of these values will be joining my Facebook page, because you can always ask individual questions on there. And I can give some limited amount of help there. I can record short videos. I can answer specific questions, like how would you suggest that I prepare for the SAT, the English portion? How do you suggest I go about preparing for the college entrance essay? Those are just some examples. Now, some of you may say to me, well, it's okay. I'm not really interested in having one of those 30 to 45-minute sessions. So for you, option number 2, receive a one-time resource. So what I would suggest is join the Facebook group, and you'll see that on the next page, and mention webinar in a post or in Messenger to request your resource. And we'll communicate back and forth as to what specific resource will be best for you and your child. You can also call or text. So here's the last slide, or second to the last slide. It's my contact information. And so you may want to take a screenshot with your phone. There's my email. There's the Facebook group page. And there's my cell number. So I want to thank you guys for being part of this pre-recorded webinar. And I really invite you guys to reach out to me through one of these means. And just feel free to ask me any kinds of questions that you have. I've worked for major tutoring companies. I've worked for my own tutoring business. I've tutored in schools, and taught in pretty much every kind of school that there is. And so if I don't have the immediate answer for you, I will find the answer for you to your questions. So I appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.